The first time anyone saw it, they joked about it. Of course they did. Every Roblox lobby has some weird decoration that looks important, but isn't. This one was a tall, gray steel door embedded into the far wall behind the spawn pads. There was no prompt, no hitbox, no "oi." It gave you nothing. All it had was a small plaque that read, "Wait." That word became a meme. Players punched the door, glitzed into it, reset their characters near it, and even stacked avatars to try and climb the frame. But it never opened. Not when the server was full, not when it lagged, not even when admins joined. Eventually, people just stopped paying attention to it. It was just part of the scenery. Except, sometimes, rarely, someone would swear they heard something on the other side. A low, scraping sound, or maybe a muffled knock. But those claims vanished as soon as the chat filled with lol fake. Then one night, a player named Gridline stayed in the lobby after everyone else had queued into their matches. He was just idling for daily rewards, not thinking about the door at all. He glanced at the server count in the corner and saw it tick down to one dot, just him. And for the first time ever, the plaque beneath the door flickered. The word "wait" dissolved into a thin loading bar that filled slowly, almost reaching the end. But just as it was about to complete, another player joined the server. The bar snapped back, and the plaque read "WAIT" once again. Gridline thought it must have been a glitch, but it happened again the next night, and the night after that. It only happened when the server count hit 1, and it always reverted the second someone else appeared. A theory began to spread, quietly, through private messages and Discord servers. What if the door wasn't locked? What if it was just waiting? Not for a key or a quest, but for absence, for silence, for the lobby to be completely empty. People laughed at the idea until someone decided to test it properly. They organized a coordinated server drain. Players would join, wait, and then leave one by one on a countdown. The video of that attempt still exists online. It's shaky and low res, but you can see the player list dropping from 12 to 11 to 10 as the chat fills with nervous jokes. Then it reaches 1. The last player is alone, and the door finally reacts. It doesn't open, not yet. It breathes. Its metal surface subtly flexes, like something organic is hidden just beneath. The loading bar returns, filling faster this time, and the plaque changes. It now says, "Almost," and that's when the test fell apart. Someone panicked and rejoined the server, resetting everything. The door went still. The plaque went back to WAIT. After that, the door became something people were afraid to be alone with. Being the last player in the server wasn't a curiosity anymore, it was an experience. It meant you were the one who heard the sounds clearly. They weren't muffled anymore. You could hear distinct footsteps pacing behind the door. They would match your own movements when you walked near it, and stop when you stopped. One player claimed that when he was alone long enough, the lobby lights dimmed slightly. It wasn't obvious at first, just enough to make the shadows deeper, longer, all of them pointing toward the door like arrows. Then the game updates started rolling out. They were small patches, and the notes never mentioned the door, but they quietly added new features. Server migration delays, stricter AFK kick timers. It suddenly became much harder to be truly alone in a lobby, almost as if the game itself was trying to prevent whatever would happen. If that player count ever reached 0, that's when someone found it, buried deep in an old asset folder, a line of code. It was commented out, but still readable. A function labeled onServerEmpty, tied directly to the door's object ID, and the developer's comment above it was just one word: release. The theory shifted from curiosity to dread. Release implied containment, not a reward. But still, curiosity won. It always does. A player named Northspawn figured out how to bypass the AFK kick timer by looping a series of micro movements, staying active while he waited. He coordinated with friends to drain the server completely. Their plan wasn't to leave him as the last player, but to leave no one at all. They timed their exits perfectly so that the server count would skip from 1 directly to 0, with no one present to see what happened. Except, Roblox servers don't shut down instantly when they're empty. They linger for a moment, a quiet grace period before termination. And in that moment, the door finally opened. There was no dramatic animation, just a soft, inward slide. It didn't reveal a room, but a corridor. A corridor that shouldn't have been able to fit inside the map, stretching impossibly far, lined with the same lobby lights repeating into infinity. The server, instead of closing down, stayed open. It was just long enough for the system to register that something new had been added to the map. When Northspawn rejoined seconds later, he expected a fresh, new instance of the game. Instead, he found himself back in the same lobby, same server ID, but the door was wide open and the impossible corridor was still there. He looked at the player list. It showed 0 names. His own wasn't even on it. It was just empty. As he stepped forward, his username flickered above his head, turning gray, as if he wasn't fully logged in anymore. The corridor reacted to his movement the way the door had before. Lights turned on ahead of him and turned off behind him, erasing the lobby as he walked deeper. He soon realized the corridor wasn't leading somewhere new. It was leading somewhere old. He was walking through discarded versions of the lobby, seeing previous layouts, removed props, deprecated GUI elements floating in the air like ghosts. Each section corresponded to an earlier update of the game. The further he went, the older everything got. The textures grew rougher, the geometry simpler. Finally, he reached a version so old it barely resembled the game at all. It was just a flat base plate under a blank skybox, and in the center stood a group of avatars, frozen in place. They were default characters, with blank faces and usernames replaced by strings of numbers. As he approached, they all turned their heads at once, snapping toward him with perfect, unsettling synchronization. The chat window, which had been empty this whole time, filled instantly with a single, repeated message, "You left," over and over, scrolling faster than the screen could even render. No Spawn tried to run, to go back the way he came, but the corridor behind him was gone. In its place, the closed steel door was embedded in the sky itself, and that's when the game finally explained what was happening. Not through text, but through mechanics. His controls began to lag, his inputs were delayed, his jump height was reduced, his movement speed was capped. It was as if the game was slowly reclassifying him from a player to something else, something static. The strange avatars approached, their movements jerky and unnatural, clipping through the ground as if they weren't meant to move at all. When they reached him, they didn't attack. They just passed right through him, and with each one that passed, his username lost a letter, flickering away until only 3 dots remained above his head, and then, nothing. The server finally closed. The lobby reset. The door was closed, the plaque back to WAIT, as if nothing had ever happened. But after that night, players started noticing something new, something subtle. Sometimes, when a server emptied out naturally and someone joined immediately after, they'd hear a faint sound, like a heavy door sealing shut. And occasionally, very rarely, the player count would display a negative number for a single frame before correcting itself, and the door's plaque, it would briefly flash a different word before returning to WAIT. A word that only a few people ever managed to catch in a screenshot. A word that explained everything, if you understood what it meant. It wasn't a promise or a warning. It was a reminder. And it said, "Contain." Thanks for watching. If you like stories like this, make sure to follow for more.